It was a quiet afternoon when everything in my life seemed to turn upside down. I had just returned from a long day of shopping, my bags filled with groceries and other essentials for the week. As I approached the front door of my house, I noticed a figure standing there, frozen in place. At first, I couldn't make out who it was, but as I got closer, my heart dropped. It was my daughter, Ivana. She had just left for her honeymoon 2 days ago. What was she doing here? "Ivana, what are you doing here?" I asked, my voice shaking with confusion. The bag slipped from my hands and fell to the ground, scattering groceries across the driveway. Ivana looked up at me, tears filling her eyes. "Mom, I came back alone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. Alone? She had just gotten married. She and her new husband, Lloyd, were supposed to be in Hawaii, enjoying their honeymoon. What could have happened so soon? "I don't understand. What about Lloyd? Where is he?" I asked, trying to make sense of the situation. Ivana shook her head, her tears now flowing freely. "I can't talk about it right now, Mom. Can I just come inside?" Without another word, I helped her carry her suitcase into the house. I could see the pain in her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world had been dropped on her. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew it was something serious. Once inside, I led Ivana to the living room and sat her down on the couch. She was still crying, and I could see her hands trembling as she tried to compose herself. I quickly made her a glass of iced tea and handed it to her, hoping it would calm her nerves. "Ivana, please talk to me. What happened?" I asked, sitting down beside her. She took a small sip of the tea, her hands still shaking. "It's Lloyd," she finally said. He's not the man I thought he was." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" Ivana looked down at the floor, her voice barely audible. "There was another woman, Mom, on our honeymoon." My heart skipped a beat. "Another woman? Who? How could he do this to you?" "I don't know, Mom. She was just there." At first, Lloyd acted like it was no big deal, like she was just a friend. But as the days went on, it became clear that there was something going on between them, Ivana explained, her voice cracking. I was stunned. I had known Lloyd for a while, and he had always seemed like a decent guy. He was polite, well-spoken, and seemed to care about my daughter, but now it felt like I was hearing about a complete stranger. "I'm going to call him," I said, reaching for my phone. "He owes us an explanation." "No, Mom, please don't," Ivana pleaded, grabbing my arm. I need to figure this out on my own." But I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. "Ivana, you're my daughter. I can't let him get away with this." Despite Ivana's protests, I dialed Lloyd's number. My hands were trembling with anger as I pressed the call button, waiting for him to pick up. After a few rings, I heard his voice on the other end. "Hello? Lloyd? What's going on?" I demanded, not even bothering with pleasantries. "Ivana came home early from your honeymoon, and she's in tears. She told me there's another woman. Is that true?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Lloyd finally spoke, his tone was calm, almost too calm. "Emily, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding? My daughter just flew home from Hawaii because of you," I snapped. "It's not what you think," Lloyd said, his voice still infuriatingly steady. "The woman Ivana is talking about is my sister." "Sister?" I repeated, feeling even more confused. "Yes, my sister. She lives in Hawaii, and she couldn't make it to the wedding because her child was sick. I thought it would be a nice surprise for her to spend some time with us while we were on our honeymoon." "That's all?" Lloyd explained, as if this was the most logical thing in the world. I felt my anger start to fade, replaced by a sinking feeling of confusion. "Why didn't you tell Ivana?" "I did," Lloyd insisted. "I told her before we left, but I guess she wasn't paying attention. Look, this is all just a big misunderstanding. I'm staying here in Hawaii for the rest of the week, and when I get back, we can talk about this properly. Tell Ivana she owes me an apology for overreacting." And with that, he hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone in disbelief. Was it really just a misunderstanding? Could it be that Ivana had overreacted? Or was there more to the story that Lloyd wasn't telling? "Ivana, he said the woman was his sister," I told her, my voice uncertain. Ivana shook her head, tears still streaming down her face. "I don't care if she's his sister or not. That's not the point. It was the way they treated me, Mom. They acted like I wasn't even there." "What do you mean?" I asked, sitting down beside her. Ivana took a deep breath, trying to calm herself before she spoke. "As soon as we got to Hawaii, Lloyd's sister, Saya, was waiting for us at the hotel. Lloyd told me she was there to put me through some sort of training to see if I was a good enough wife for him." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Training? On your honeymoon?" "Yes," Ivana said, her voice filled with bitterness. "She made me clean her house, cook meals for her family, and even took my phone away when I tried to look up recipes. Lloyd went along with it like it was perfectly normal." I felt my blood start to boil again. That's outrageous. How could they treat you like that? "I don't know, Mom. I thought I knew Lloyd, but now I feel like I don't know him at all," Ivana said, her voice breaking once again. I sat beside Ivana, my mind racing. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was something far more serious. Lloyd and his sister had turned what was supposed to be a romantic honeymoon into some sort of twisted test for my daughter. "We need to confront them," I said finally. "We need to make them see how wrong this is." Ivana looked up at me, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "But what if they don't listen? What if Lloyd doesn't care?" "Then we'll make him care," I said firmly. "You deserve better than this, Ivana. You deserve to be treated with respect." The next day, Lloyd called Ivana again. "We're coming over tomorrow to talk about how we're going to live from now on," he said, his tone as cold and detached as ever. Ivana looked at me with wide eyes. "What should I do, Mom?" "Let them come," I said, a plan already forming in my mind. "We'll be ready." The following afternoon, Lloyd and Saya arrived at our house. I could tell from the moment they walked through the door that they weren't here to apologize. Lloyd had a smug look on his face, and Saya seemed just as confident. "Well, Ivana, have you done any reflecting?" Lloyd asked, his tone dripping with arrogance. I felt my hands tighten into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Please come in," I said, gesturing to the living room. "Let's sit down and talk about this." As they sat on the couch, I called for my husband, Oswald. He entered the room carrying a yoga mat, a confident smile on his face. "Time for a little exercise," he said, laying the mat on the floor. Lloyd frowned. "What's this about?" "Well," Oswald said, "if you expect Ivana to go through tests, then I think it's only fair that you do the same. Let's see if you're fit to be a good husband." Lloyd's face turned red. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "Is it?" Oswald replied, raising an eyebrow. "You put my daughter through all kinds of tests on your honeymoon. Don't you think it's only fair that we see what you're made of?" Saya shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly not expecting this turn of events. Lloyd, however, seemed too prideful to back down. "Fine," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "What do I have to do?" "Simple," Oswald said, stepping onto the mat. "Push-ups. Let's see if you can support a family by keeping yourself in shape. If you can't handle a few push-ups, how can you handle the responsibilities of being a husband?" Lloyd got down on the mat, his face red with embarrassment. He lowered himself into a push-up position, but as soon as he tried to push himself back up, his arms gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor. Oswald, on the other hand, effortlessly performed push-up after push-up beside him, barely breaking a sweat. "Come on, Lloyd," he said with a grin. "You've got to do better than that if you want to be a good husband." Lloyd's face was now bright red. "Zrenia," Его руки трясся, когда он пытался поднять себя с пола. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't manage even one proper push-up. Saya, who had been sitting on the couch watching the whole scene, finally spoke up. "This is ridiculous. Why are you putting us through this?" I turned to her with a smile. "Oh, don't think you're getting off that easy, Saya. You made my daughter do all sorts of chores on her honeymoon, didn't you? Now it's your turn. There are some dishes in the kitchen that need to be washed. Let's see how well you can handle them." Saya's eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," I replied. "Ivana didn't sign up to be your maid, and I'm not going to let you get away with treating her like one. Now go on, there's work to be done." Reluctantly, Saya got up and headed to the kitchen, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. I could hear the clatter of dishes as she started to wash them, her frustration evident in every movement. Meanwhile, Lloyd was still struggling on the mat, his arms shaking as he tried once again to do a push-up. But it was no use. He was completely out of shape and couldn't even manage one. Oswald, on the other hand, had finished his set of 50 push-ups and was now standing over Lloyd with a satisfied grin on his face. "Looks like you've got some work to do, Lloyd," he said. "If you want to be a good husband, you need to be strong enough to support your wife." Lloyd glared up at him, his pride clearly wounded. "This is stupid," he muttered. "None of this proves anything." "Oh, I think it proves a lot," I said, stepping forward. "It proves that you and Saya were more interested in testing Ivana than in treating her with respect. And now that the tables have turned, you don't like it very much, do you?" With both Lloyd and Saya thoroughly humbled, it was time for the real conversation. I turned to Ivana, who had been sitting quietly on the couch, watching everything unfold. "Ivana, this is your life. What do you want to do?" Ivana looked at Lloyd, then at Saya, and finally at me. "I want a divorce," she said, her voice steady and firm. "I can't be with someone who doesn't respect me." Lloyd's eyes widened in shock. "A divorce? You can't be serious." "I am," Ivana said, standing up. "You treated me like a servant on our honeymoon, and you let your sister make me feel like I wasn't good enough. I deserve better than that." Lloyd sputtered, clearly caught off guard. But it was all just a test. You were supposed to prove that you were a good wife." Ivana shook her head. "I don't need to prove anything to you, Lloyd. If you can't see my worth, then that's your problem." I felt a swell of pride as I watched my daughter stand up for herself. She was finally taking control of her life and refusing to be treated with anything less than respect. In the weeks that followed, Ivana filed for divorce, and Lloyd and Saya faded out of our lives. Ivana started to rebuild her confidence, focusing on herself and what made her happy. She took up cooking, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And before long, she was whipping up delicious meals that put Lloyd and Saya's so-called tests to shame. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, Ivana looked up at me with a smile. "You know, Mom, I'm glad I went through all of that. It taught me that I deserve more than what Lloyd was willing to give me." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're right, Ivana. You deserve the world." And with that, we moved forward, leaving Lloyd and Saya in the past where they belonged.